Okay, in this tutorial we're going to cover how to do ZBrush, or neural maps in ZBrush. What neural maps are is basically taking a type of texture map and making your model look like it's really high resolution by showing polygon deformation, but not actually having the polygons deformed. So where we last left off with, we have the character with the unwrap UVs on here and the checker pattern to show that everything is consistent and mapped out correctly. And so when we send it to ZBrush, it'll create the neural map for us, and thus we already want it to be UV'd before then. ZBrush can create its own neural maps, but since we want to use our neural maps, our maps on the character, we need to have them instead of ZBrush making them for purposes of painting and coloring. Alright, so what we have here is we have the checker pattern character. If I were to take everything or just part of them, you can see here minus the sword, which is a separate texture map. I have pretty much all the UVs laid out, so when I send the body over to ZBrush, I'm only going to be sending out this part, and that's all I need to export, but I've already pre-unwrapped everything. If I were to take this, let's say, assign initial shader group to selection, you can see here he has the everything's gray and shiny, or not shiny, but everything's gray and ready for texturing. What the neural map will do is take this smooth surface that has very few polygons on it, very large and basic form, and we're going to take and create a neural map which will add details and wrinkles to them. You can see here as the light reflects on his shirt, thus the shadows and light change, and you can see that it adds shadows, but there is no polygon deformation to the character. He has no polygons there, but you still get the illusion that he has wrinkles and details and wrinkles in his pants. This isn't the final model. I'm going to send out one more model from ZBrush that actually has a deformation on the pant legs, and that'll show how to create the, will add a little more to the wrinkles. So I'm going to modify and bring back a higher resolution than this mesh from ZBrush. Alright, so in order to do all this, let's set that back to the regular mesh so you can see what it looks like. We're going to click on the mesh we want to send. So I'm going to click this mesh, and we're going to go to File, Export Selection, and we want to use an OBJ export. Now, if you don't see OBJ export in your menu system, it's probably because it's not I don't want to say installed, but preloaded. In order to get that in there, you would go to Window, Settings and Preferences, and go to Plugin Manager. So you click in Plugin Manager and scroll down somewhere halfway in here. You should see OBJ Export, and I already have it set to Loaded and Auto Load, which means every time I load Maya, it'll always be there. So if you don't have that, at least click Loaded so you can see it on the export list. Auto Load just means leave it always on Maya. So once you're done that, you can press Close. So now when you go to File, Export Selection, you should see OBJ Export. So I'm going to send this to the desktop, and I'm going to call this Hero Original Mesh. This way, when I send it back from ZBrush, I'll have a ZBrush mesh, so I know the difference. So Hero Original Mesh, I press Export, and we're good. I'm also going to export the belt as a separate piece. So File, Export Selection, call it Hero Belt. And I don't actually need these, but these are placeholders, so when I put it in ZBrush, I'll know what I'm looking at. Otherwise, I won't know where the belt line is. And the same for the chest. I'm going to export that one. File, Export Selection, and call this Hero Chest Armor. And Export Selection. So I have 3 different OBJs. If you wanted to send out more, let's say I wanted to ZBrush his face, I could send this out and sculpt on this also. But I'm only going to sculpt on the arm or the body, just do a basic demo on how that works. So it's been exported now. So we jump over to ZBrush, and here we can see the end result. So I've already gone through and sculpted all of the wrinkles and stuff into him. And so now I'll explain how that pretty much works as we sculpt in ZBrush. And I can zoom in and you can see that he has nice wrinkles all over where he needs to have wrinkles at. And what ZBrush does is it has multiple resolutions. So right now we're running at about 2.3 million polygons. If I were to reduce the resolution, the shortcut to go downwards is holding Shift and pressing D, and I can drop to the lowest subdivision level. So this is the one I sent out of Maya, and we're going to sculpt on this one back up to the high res. So this is just an example of what we're going to be aiming for. Alright, so let me reset everything. Let's slide this over so I can keep the full menus up here. Alright, so we have this, and I'm going to go press Preferences and initialize ZBrush. You don't have to do this. By clicking this, it would you like, yeah, fully initialize it. It resets all your settings. It erases the character out of the scene, and it puts everything back to default, so everything's cleared out. So this is what you would see when you first start ZBrush. But again, you don't have to initialize if you just opened it. Sometimes you might see the light box sitting up here, and it kind of gets in the way and takes up a lot of your image space. If you want to be able to see more, just click Lightbox and it turns off that menu so you don't have to see that anymore. Alright, so in order to use ZBrush, you have to do a couple things in a certain order in order for the program to actually start working for you. So we're going to go press Import, because we were importing an OBJ. Loading tool means an existing tool or brush that you already have in ZBrush. And if you don't see this menu, you click this little tab right here, the divider, and by clicking that, it pops this out. Alright, so I'm going to go load or import object, and from the desktop where I saved it, I'm going to pull in the original hero mesh. I'm going to press open, and it says that not everything was four-sided squares. Normally you would aim for quads for four-sided geometry, but there might have been something like a five-sided one or a three-sided one. So it's asking me, what do you want to do about that? I'm going to set it to quads and triangles, so fours and threes. Anything that was a five or more, just make it a four or a three. So I'm going to click OK with that, and the character pops in here. This is our tools options. So this character is considered a tool. So we're going to draw this tool. In order to do that, you have to be clicked on it, and you click on the middle of the screen with the left mouse button, and you pull and you drag them onto the screen. So the first thing you want to do is press the edit button. If you don't press edit and you try and draw on them, you're going to draw a new guy. And you're like, oh, well, okay. And let's try it again. Well, why can't I draw my character? That's because there's no edit button push. Once you click edit, you're like, okay, now I can control the guy and paint on him. But I have all these other guys stuck on my screen now. What happened is you dropped them onto the canvas, so they're glued to your screen now. They're like flat 2D images. So we need to erase the canvas. So to do that, go over to Document right here, and we're going to do New Document with the window size, and it asks, do you want to save? It's not saying, do you want to save your object, your character right here. It's saying, do you want to save this flat image that's like a JPEG or something, that's like a screen capture? And I don't want to save the screen, I want to save the object. So there's no need to press save, because it's only going to save the flat image. So I'm going to press no. And the character is still there, so I'm just erasing the screen basically. So we're going to take this character and draw him on the screen, and then press edit, and now I can spin around the character. Alright, so to start sculpting with the character now, there's a couple different options. First thing we want to do is go to, let's go to Geometry, and we'll click the Divide button. So I click Divide, and you can see what happened. It took the polygons and divided everything. It quadrupled, it split every square into 4 more pieces. So I can slide that up and down now. If I click Subdivision 1, drag this, I can slide up and down to different resolution levels. I can divide it again at the resolution level 2, and I'll get resolution level 3, and you can see it's getting smoother. And so we slide back down, you get 1, you get 2, and you get 3. In Maya, you can turn on soft edge and hard edge, and it just kind of blurs it out and makes it really smooth. ZBrush doesn't read those soft edges and hard edges, so you're seeing the actual geometry and topology. Alright, so in order to start sculpting, we're going to go over to the standard brush right here. If I click on standard brush, I have a whole bunch of different options. You can use lots of different brushes if you want to use. I'm going to typically use standard brush. Sometimes clay brush is pretty helpful too, or smoothing is also helpful. But generally, if you don't need any of the other brushes, move is also a helpful one right here. But you can play around with brushes if you want. Most of your work can be done with the standard brush. So I click and drag with the left mouse button, and I start drawing on the surface. If I click on the empty space on the screen with the left mouse button, I can rotate the character, and you can see that I've sculpted right into him. If I press Control Z, it'll undo what I've done. Alright, so if I wanted to make this a smaller drawing mark, I can go draw size right here, take this at 64 and slide it lower, and you can see that it made the red a bit smaller, and now I can draw a smaller line on a surface. Alright, the next note about, I guess, I'll cover intensity. So I clicked the intensity. If I slide this higher, I can make a much higher mark. If I slide it down lower, it'll make it really low that I can't even see what's happening. So if I can slide up a little bit higher, it's so low that it doesn't even appear on the screen yet. So you can start to see a little bit marking up now. So the higher your Z intensity, the more force you have to move the polygons. So let's Control Z a couple times, take those off. I'm going to set the intensity back up a little bit higher and the draw size a little higher. Now, in order to move around the screen, we use the left mouse button to click in the empty space and move. But if you wanted to zoom, let's go with pan. If you want to pan, you would hold the Alt key and then press left mouse button in the empty area, and you can slide your guy around on the screen. Alright, so we can move and we can pan. Now the zooming is actually rather tricky. If you want to zoom, there's a couple different options, but if you hold the Alt key, press and hold left mouse button, just like you're going to pan, but while you're still holding Alt and still holding left mouse button, you release the Alt key and still holding left mouse button, you can zoom. So it does take a bit of practice to get that to work. So hold Alt, grab left, hold left, release Alt, and then eventually release left. Alright, so that's one method of doing it. I think you can also, I forget the other options. Yeah, I don't remember offhand, but that's the original or more common one. There's a couple other options. You could try these over here, so which is move over here and scale right here and rotate right here. It's just usually once you get used to the shortcuts to move things on the screen that way. And don't use these up here. This is just going to zoom into your drawing and it gets really pixelated. That's not the scale button, that's just zooming. So we're going to do actual size. The scale is down here where you can see it gets nice clear resolution when you zoom in. Alright, and if you wanted to click the guy and lock him on the screen, because right now he's kind of spinning, if you hold the Shift key and start spinning that way, he'll click. So if you hold Shift or start moving in the direction you want, you get close enough, hold Shift, and he'll click into place. So the Shift key locks like that. And so now let's start practicing drawing. So I'm going to zoom into the character's chest, and let's say I changed my brush size down a little bit. So let's say I wanted to draw, actually scroll down here to the legs. So I'm going to put some like wrinkles on his pant legs or something. I can try and sculpt with, let's say, by pushing here and that, and it pulls up and down, or it pulls up. If you want to push down, you hold the Alt key. By holding Alt and drawing into character, you can start to push into the surface. And so pretty much all your sculpting is basically just sculpting directly on it or holding Alt to push down. Or if you want to smooth it back out, you hold this Shift key, and by holding Shift and drawing, you can see it smooths it right back out. So back to as close as you can get back to the original topology. And the rest is pretty much just skillfully sculpting until you get what you want. I'm not going to go through and record the entire sculpting process because that could take hours depending on how detailed you want to get. You can get really high resolution with this stuff, but I'll start you off with the basics of how this would work. What's important is let's say you have photo references. So I'm going to click this tab right here to actually, one more thing before I cover photo references. Let's pull it back out. When I start sculpting, I won't know where the belt line is, so I won't know where the shirt is to the pants. So I need to add one more thing. This is called Subtool, where you add different objects to your existing mesh. In order to do this, click something else that's not currently your guy. The active one is this big, large one right here. So click pretty much anything else besides that guy also. So I'm going to click the Polymesh 3D, and we're going to import on top of this thing. If you import on top of this guy, you'll essentially erase him because you're importing a tool on top of a tool. So click the Polymesh 3D star or any of these other ones and go to import, and I'm going to grab the hero belt and press open, and again quads and triangles, boom, and then we have the belt. The belt isn't attached to the character at the moment. They're two separate tools. Let's grab one more. We're going to go press import and import the hero chest armor, press open, and we have his chest armor. The reason we don't see anything on the back is because polygons are one-sided. Some programs like Maya and 3ds Max and such can show you both sides of the polygons, but they also have settings that can show you the one side that we're actually going to get. So when you see it in ZBrush, this is what it doesn't have a side. When you send it to a game engine, you get the same result. They're only one-sided. So that's why there's no side on the other side. Alright, so let's go over to, so once we have all three of these, in order to attach these to our character now, I'm going to click on the original character-based mesh and click on the subtool command. Once we're on subtools, we're going to go and append. So I click on the append button, and this only works if you've already imported your pieces. If you haven't imported yet, these aren't going to be here and you won't be able to append anything to it. You can only append open tools. Since we've already opened them, I'll go to append, click hero belt, and it pops exactly in place because when you export it, the OBJ file remembers the XYZ coordinates, so it knows where to drop it where it last left off in Maya based on world space. So let's go and append the chest armor. And so what this does is it puts the other pieces in place on him. I probably should have imported the back armor also. This way I know where to paint up to. But you can see here we can put multiple pieces in here. Again, they're different resolutions. So if I click on, let's say, like Photoshop as layers, I click on the hero chest armor. And so this lights up and then everything else darkens. So now I can go and divide this if I wanted to. So scroll down here to geometry and click on divide, and it starts smoothing it back out. I'm not going to sculpt any details on there, so I'm not going to worry about that. But going back to the original piece right here, not the other pieces, just this one. Actually, subtools, not that. So I can click back to the belt layer if I wanted to sculpt the belt, or click to the hero layer and get this. Alright, so going back to the sculpting aspect now. So these are placeholders just so I know where the wrinkles are going to go. I'm going to use the standard tool and kind of just start sculpting. But in order to know what to sculpt, I'm going to slide this over here. I'm going to click this divider right here, which will shorten that a little smaller. And I can, let's minimize Maya as well. Boom. Alright, so I'm going to use reference images. The best way to create something is to reference, unless you've memorized what wrinkles generally look like and you understand the concepts of wrinkles. It's probably easier to use photos as references. I have a couple of different photo references, so let's pull up references. So for the pants right here, let's pull up this. I grabbed this one so I can kind of look at how the wrinkles in the pants work, usually bunching up here because I'm going to have the pants legs bunch around his knees. So I'm going to move the wrinkles a little bit higher. There's not too much wrinkles over here. And then this one, this is a different type of pants. I think this is something more like linen or something. As you can see, you get different amounts of wrinkles. So more wrinkles up around the shirt area, wrinkles as the knee is coming forward. So this is understanding how wrinkles and drapery works if you've taken other drawing classes. And you can see more cargo pants kind of wrinkles, how they're going to look on a stiffer fabric. These are 3D scans, so you take an actual real person and you scan them with a 3D scanner and you get 3D data. This kind of takes out the work of even modeling things to begin with for a 3D modeler, but it's also great to have actual scans without the people's clothes and colors and stuff on there. All you're seeing is light and shadow on an object, so you can really see where things are folded and where these wrinkles are occurring. And for things that like fantasy creatures that you can't 3D scan because they don't exist, that would be great for a 3D modeler. So, but the idea that having a 3D scan to show you where these wrinkles occur is really, really awesome. So continuing on with more, you can also use concept art from other characters, let's say images and drawings. So this is Link. So if I wanted to, again, look at how the pants are going to lay in comparison to being bunched up around the boots, you can kind of reference how the artists have drawn it, unless you already know how to draw wrinkles. Here's another one. We can see how, again, the wrinkles show on the clothes. And then here's another group of artist renditions of how wrinkles will occur. So you can just Google search all these different images and find out what would best appeal or look good for you. And here's a 3D model, probably not an actual scan. It possibly could be, but it's probably someone's 3D model, which again has really good references for how the drapery should look. And back to here. There's also a couple I have for these shirts. Again, most of these are 3D scans. This might be a 3D model, but yeah, it's really great to see how the wrinkles, you can just basically copy and put them on there to get realistic looking effects. Here's a sculpt of another character. These are some scan data. You can see how wrinkly some of the stuff is. And just copy what wrinkles look applicable to your character's pose. Here's some more scan data, and this is another 3D model, and some more scan data. So it's really helpful to see light and shadow like that, and another 3D model. So just grabbing, oops, and one more, a 3D scan. So grabbing different models like that really helps. So what I did is I put them on the desktop, so I have a couple of different open ones, and I can start sculpting what I have here. So using these images and sculpting, I'm going to speed this up really quick and just start off recording. And you guys, I'll time lapse and do this really quick. It has spent too long in this. And then I'll cover how to export out when we're done. All right. So let's start, I guess, bunching up a little bit of the drapery around here. Let's say he has, his knees are going to be up here, but he probably has a wrinkle coming somewhere around here and somewhere there, popping out there. And I can use, I'm starting at a low resolution subdivision at the moment, which you don't usually want to jump to the highest resolution at first. You want to kind of like leave it a little bit low resolution. So let's bunch up some more, kind of blend it out. Hold Shift key, pop out some of those. And once you're happy with the base shape being started, there should be probably some more bagginess down here, more popping out around the edges. All right, once you're happy with the base shape, you can start punching up the resolution. The shortcut for doing that is Control D. That's the same thing as going and clicking and pressing the divide button on your geometry right here. So here's your divide button. I jumped up to subdivision level 4. This is currently 142,000 polygons. By the time I finished mine, I was at like 2.5 million. So let's slide that back in so I can see the reference images. And I can start refining this some more. Let's hold Alt and kind of pull that down, pull this up, and keep going and sculpting. And another helpful tool once you've made it relatively far in the sculpting is the pinch tool right here. By doing this, it kind of like pulls your polygons in closer, and you can make sharper lines if you're aiming to have sharper lines. So by pinching and pulling, you can refine your shapes a little bit more, especially if you're trying to add more polygons in a certain area. All right, and so that's a rough start on putting some wrinkles based on a couple different images and seeing how wrinkles should go. You can add some more and play around, such as a really quick scribble for wrinkles. You can also do some stuff on the shirt if you want to put some extra wrinkles on the shirt and draw some up this way, kind of blend them in, pull some that way. And if you break up the contour of the outer edge of the body also, so pull some parts in. There's probably too many polygons to be working with. Shift D is a shortcut for lowering it back down. Smooth that back out. And once you put in a couple more wrinkles on the edges, this way it starts to break up the outer contour, and you can start to see the clothes have a little more wrinkle to them. Should probably be a little more down around the belt line. All right, so you get a contour kind of broken up like that, and that makes it look a little more visually interesting. And this is probably a bit too much. Let's smooth that back in a little bit. And a little bit more. All right, so kind of a more subtle contour on the clothing. And again, same with the legs. The problem with putting contours on the neural mapping is that even though it starts to look a little more visually appealing and smooths it out and looks really cool, you have the problem of the silhouette doesn't quite match what you're working on. So when you put the neural maps on there, they don't blend. Neural maps only work direct on. You can't show them from an angle because then they start to look flat like a painting. So let's say I take this character now who's probably finished enough and ready for exporting. So if I lower the subdivision level back down, let's say I go back to subdivision level, let's slide that open some more. Subdivision level 1, you don't see any of the contours on the side of them, and the same thing, you don't see any contours on the legs. So you'd have to punch up the subdivision level to, let's say, level 2, and now you can start to see the contours a little better. So when you're looking polygon-wise straight on, the neural map, even though it looks really detailed up front, it'll look like a smooth surface. You need to make sure you have enough topology and polygons to hold the edge of the character. So when you spin around, you can see it's really smooth here. So if I have a wrinkle popping out of them, I need to make sure that there actually is some topology on the low res. Otherwise, if I go all the way to the high res, you can see it doesn't matter there, you don't have anything. But the high res should pretty closely match the low res. If I zoom down here, you can see that it's very nice and rounded and curved. If I slide this back down to level 2, I'm losing a bit of the topology. So I'm not going to get such a rounded curve. I'm only going to get a little bit of a bump, which is a lot better than getting nothing. So you just have a painting on your guy versus actual topology. So this guy has topology now. You could push him up even higher, but this way he's already 35,000 polygons. That's a little too high for game resolution. So subdivision level 2 for me gives me around 9,000 polygons, which should be enough. In order to get more subdivisions here, I could have pre-added edge loops to the character in Maya before setting them over. ZBrush can also add edge loops. It gets a little more tricky, but you could add edge loops within ZBrush. So that should be enough to get you guys started to sculpt and create a little bit. So the next part is exporting out of ZBrush once you have as far as you want to go with it. So to export, we want to make sure we're sending out the neural maps. The neural maps are what's going to create the deformation on our character. I could probably smooth that out a little more. Okay, and so if you want to get super detailed, you just have to add enough subdivisions, and when you start drawing, you can get some really crisp little lines, whereas at a lower subdivision level, you really can't get those lines with the same brush. It just doesn't work. By sliding it back up, you can start to get really crisp lines. Anyway, so enough about the sculpting aspect. So we're going to go to export now. So to export, we need the resolution we're going to send back to Maya. So I'm going to go slide this down to subdivision level 2. That's the resin I'm going to send, not the one that's already there. But I'm going to send level 2. So we go over to export and press export. And I'm going to call this the zBrush mesh. This is the one coming out of ZBrush. So it's slightly different. It's quadrupled on the polygon size. And I don't need the other accessories. They weren't sculpted on, so I'm done with those. So I have the low resolution out of ZBrush now, but that still won't give us the high resolution. So we're going to create the neural map to make it look like it's high resolution. So now we've exported that, and if we want to save this also, we go to Save As. And I can put this on here, and this will be a ZTL. This is a Z tool. And so Hero, Original Mesh, Z tool, sure. That saves out this. There's a couple other save options up here. Try not to use those. One of them will just save a flat image. You don't want to save a flat image, so make sure you don't use the document save as. That's a flat image, not your 3D model. There's another one for Z Project, which saves everything here. We don't need everything saved. We just need this one. This is the Z tool that we need. Everything's already attached to it. Alright, so exporting now. Depending on the texture map resolution you want to go with, we're going to go with, I used 4096 on the export out of the UV, so I'm going to stick with 4096. If you use 2048 or something else, you can go with that. So we go click down under texture map, and we're going to pick a new texture. And so since he's already UV'd, it already came with that with the OBJ file. If he hadn't had UVs yet, ZBrush would have to create the UVs. And UV map, actually I made a new texture, I didn't click the UV texture yet. right now it's set to 2048. I'm going to click 4096 first. Once I've done that under UV map 4096, then go back to texture map and create a new texture at the 4096. So this should now be a 4096, it says on the screen right, well, there. Alright, so the texture, we have a new texture, we have a UV map. We're going to go create normal map. Actually, we probably don't need the texture map at all. Yeah, scratch that part. You just need the UV map set to the size you want, and then go to normal map. We don't need a texture map. We're going to make sure it's tangent, space coordinates, and the other settings should be fine. If you're sending it to Maya, you want tangent. So we're going to go create normal map now. Do this on the subdivision that you want to keep. This is the level 2 that I'm going to keep. Don't do this on your higher resolution. Do this on the lowest that you want to save out and export. And I've already exported this one. So create normal map. And then it'll start processing up here on the top. Actually, that was really fast. It's already done. Once you've done, you'll see this purple map, and that's what we're going to be using for our character. You can see here it's made some alterations to him. So now we've created the map, but we need to send it out of ZBrush. So we're going to click Clone Normal Map, click on that one, and that sends it over to the texture side right here. So I click on the texture now, and we're going to go to, before we export it out, we need to flip it because ZBrush does this upside down. So if you notice, when you draw your map, you'll probably see that the purple looks upside down to the way you originally UV'd them. So to flip that, you would go over to Texture, Flip Vertical. You could also do this in Photoshop, but you might also do it here while you can. Flip vertical, and it flips it. And so now we can go to Export, and this is the, you can do PSD, JPEG, PNG, bitmap, TIFF, whatever you want. I'll leave it as a well, I could always do bitmap, this way I don't have to open the PSD. So Hero Original Mesh, I'm going to call this Hero Normal Map, so I know what this is. Alright, so this is the Hero Normal Map. I press Save, and now I have a normal map created of the guy. So let's jump over to Maya now. Actually, let's take a look at what we have. So this would be under here. So here's the normal map, and it created the pant leg deformation right here. And you have a little bit of the shirt deformation also. And that's about all I've sculpted on the guy in ZBrush, so let's close out that. And let's jump over to Maya. Alright, so here we left off with Maya with the export. So we're going to go and create a, before we create the texture, let's go bring in the modified version. So File, Imports, we're going to click on the Hero ZBrush Mesh. Usually when you import and export with OBJs, you're going to get an MTL file, which means material. We don't have any materials in the character, so we don't need to worry about those. You can delete the MTL files. We just want the OBJ, which is the polygon mesh. So I take this Hero ZBrush Mesh OBJ, import them, and so it'll create a single OBJ, which is fine. We'll press OK. And you can see that it brought the guy in and dropped him exactly in place with the other guy. And you can see it popped out his deformation just a little bit. You can start to see the silhouette on the guy, which doesn't matter too much because I have the straps on him, so I'll have to go and move those manually. So if I take the original one and I could put on another layer, you can see the difference. I could just move it off, or I could press delete. I'll make a new layer with this guy and I'll hide it. So I have the original on its own layer now. This one, you notice it has all the these hard edge polygons. So you want to make sure this is soft edges before you apply your normal maps. So I'm going to click on this and go to Normals, Soften Edge, and that softens it. So now it's really smooth. It still has the silhouette where it kind of contours outwards, and you can start to see that shape. So that's what we want right there, versus the smoother one, which won't show that. So now I've created that. Now we need to make a texture map that will get applied to this guy, or bring in the texture map. So I'm going to create over here with the Hypershade, which is located under Window, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. So you click on that, open it up, and we get this window. I'm going to do a Lambert, a basic shader. Click on this one, it pops it down into our workspace or our work area. So I'm going to double click on this new shader that got created. And then over here, I'm not going to put color on him, or else he'll be a purple guy, and I don't need purple. I need to make sure it goes in a bump mapping slot, which will create the bumps for him. That's where the purple maps go. So I take these bump mapping, click on the map icon, the checkerboard, and we're going to add a file. We're not going to use the other ones. I guess I could do a PSD file, but I'm going to go with regular file. Here we want to set the bump to tangent space normals, because that's what we exported at ZBrush, is the tangent. So tangent space normals, and then again hit the checker pattern, because this is where we're going to attach our map to. This is the bump depth. Click on that, and again we're going to click file and tell it which file we're going to use. I'm going to click the folder to find the file, and this is the hero body normal map, which is this one. Actually, that's the one I had done in the end. The one I did for the demo just now was this guy. So I'm going to take the hero normal map and press open. And so once that's all done, you can see it's kind of organizing it, or trying to organize it down here. So this would go here, and so that goes there. You don't have to organize it per se, but you can see here it has the two different shaders, two different categories, and putting it all together. So now I have the, if I press right click refresh on this, I can refresh this, but it doesn't matter. We have our normal map attached to the character now, or not the character, he's attached to this shader, and this shader needs to get dropped onto the guy. So I'm going to middle mouse click and hold on the final result and drag it onto the body of the character. By doing so, it should light up with the normals. In this case it didn't, so it probably didn't get attached. Yeah, for some reason it's still missing the location, even though I said yes. Click on the folder, try it again. Yes, I want that one. Press open. There we go. Now it's attached. So now I can look at the end result, and you can see that it has the deformation pronounced off the surface of the guy. It has a lot more resolution, which is fine for a 10,000 polygon character guy. And it holds the silhouette a bit well. Not as nice as it did in ZBrush, but nice enough that we can tell that he has wrinkles on him. And if I were to spend more time and make it a little more pronounced and sculpted, I can get better results here. Now if I were to take the same mesh, or the same map, and put it on the original character, which we can do. So if I turn, let's say I take this guy, and I move him over here, and I turn on the original guy, which is this guy, and put the map on this guy, you can see the end result. The neural map doesn't bump out your silhouettes. So even though we had over here in ZBrush, punching them up to the highest resolution, you can see we sculpted on here. The neural map, even though we've made the purple map at this super high res, it can't punch out outer details. It can only show front-on details. So if I jump back over here to Maya, you can see it made it look like it's punched out and detailed front-on, but from the side, there's no deformation unless the, actually let's look at this guy. So there's no deformation on this guy. There's none of the legs. It's still the same smooth surface. The reason is this guy has a higher resolution. We export him higher to get that silhouette form in there. And so that's the end result here, how all this works. I've already done the end result here with the full resolution. If I drag this back on the guy here, this isn't the final model I had. I'm still missing the original, the modified version. I can pull that up real quick though. That would be full character with texturing normals. So now with the normal map all set up, we can start to see that the character has a lot more detail to him. Again, from the side view, you don't really get much detail, even though it looks like he has a big wrinkle right there. So you want to make sure you have as much silhouette as you can get sculpted into the character, and you start to get a little bit more detail. So that's a few more hours of sculpting and trying to create more wrinkles and drapery on the back of him and the front of him. Alright, and so that's how you make normal maps and send them out of ZBrush and apply them to the character. So hopefully that explains this a bit. And the next step would be texturing with actual colors to texture him up.